morning, everyone. My name's Poppy Collinson, and I'm Director of Business Development and Commercial at ICAS. And I'd like to give you a warm welcome to this ICAS webinar, Life as a CA Student. Before we begin, there's just a few housekeeping matters to remind you of. You can submit questions at any time through the Q&A facility, which is at the top of your screen. Questions can be submitted anonymously if you prefer, and we'll be saving all your questions until the end of the webinar for the live Q&A session. Please also join the conversation today, as I see someone already has, through the chat box accessed at the top of your screen. That'll allow you to comment on what you're hearing or to start a discussion with your fellow attendees on any matters covered by the webinar. Everyone on this webinar is automatically muted, so there's no need to be worried about background noise. We can't hear you. We look forward to receiving your questions throughout the course of the webinar, and of course we'll try and get to as many as we possibly can. I'm delighted to be joined this afternoon by our panellists. Sarah Dunsmore, CA, Auditor from Audit Scotland. We have Rory Mackenzie, a trainee from Henderson Logie. We have Rachel Alexander, CA from MHA, and Robert McCall, CA from NatWest. If I could ask the panellists to join me on screen now. Thank you. Lovely to have you all here today. And I'm going to start with what I hope is an easy question. Could you each briefly introduce yourself, talk about what you're currently doing, who you're working for, and what was your route into accountancy? And maybe, Robert, we could start with you.
Yeah, thanks, Poppy. My name's Robert. I work at NatWest Group, so a bank in the UK primarily. My current role is a finance business intelligence manager. That's slightly meaningless if you don't quite know what it is, but it's really a sort of mishmash of all things FP&A and finance business partnering looking forward. So I partner the chief operating officer of our technology business and also do some executive decision support across the technology franchise for NatWest Group. My journey into accountancy started through uni. So I went to study economics and finance at uni in Edinburgh. I completed an internship at NatWest Group in 2021 and enjoyed it so much and saw so many opportunities that I came back on the graduate programme and almost accidentally fell into accountancy, if I'm honest. Really, I was coming for the finance part of it and hadn't really thought about the professional qualification. But throughout my time at ICAS, it's given me a great step up in terms of understanding what's going on in the wider bank and being able to translate quite a lot of that for non-financial stakeholders. So quite a quick transition from leaving uni to today being in a permanent role, which is great, but it does fly by.
Thank you. And I think we'll pick up on that, it flying by, as the conversation goes on. But for now, I'm going to ask Sarah, would you mind introducing yourself, please?
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sarah Dunsmore. I'm currently a senior auditor at Audit Scotland. So we audit local government, central government, NHS. So I am in the world of audit and we're going into busy season at the moment. So it's all go. In terms of how I got into accountancy, I went to the University of Strathclyde and I studied economics and finance, and I finished my training contract with Audit Scotland and qualified in 2024. And yeah, echoing what Robert says, it just flies by. And yes, that's kind of a short and sweet answer.
Thank you. And really interesting to know that you both studied the same subject, economics and finance, which again, we'll come back to in a little bit about when we start talking about what interested you in accountancy in the first place, or in Robert's case, a bit of a byproduct. But Rory, could I ask you to introduce yourself, please?
Hi, my name's Rory Mackenzie. I currently work for Henderson Logie. I'm a junior auditor. I've just sat my last set of exams in ICAS, so fingers crossed. I'm waiting for the results to come back and get them on the 4th of June. So I'm sort of towards the end of the ICAS journey. I studied accounting at Dundee University and quite liked it. Between my third and fourth year, I did an internship with Henderson Logie for the summer. I did 6 weeks and then got to the end of it and was asked to come back once I'd finished uni, and I accepted. So yeah, currently working in audit, and we sort of audit a number of entities, sort of charities, companies, funds, yeah, enjoying it so far.
Great, and fingers crossed and all the best for the results in a couple of weeks' time. So that's really exciting for you. Rachel, could I ask you just to introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, of course. So my name's Rachel Alexander, and I'm currently working at MHA, which stands for McIntyre Hudson Accountancy. So I did it a bit differently, and I went through the school leaver route for ICAS, so I never went to university. When I started about almost 6 years ago, I started in a smaller firm called Gagans, and I did my ICAS exams over the 5 years there. And then recently we've merged with MHA, which is a bigger firm. And I'm now an assistant manager in the Accounts and Business Advisory Services team.
Fantastic, thank you. And I guess what's always really interesting to us as ICAS, but I think to our listeners as well, is what made you want to get into this profession and what was it that appealed to you? And I think on that, I'd like to ask Rachel first, because you came to training as a chartered accountant straight from school. So you must have had a very strong idea of what you wanted your career to be.
So when I decided what I was going to do, it was in 6th year, and it's when you're deciding what universities you're going to apply for and what you want to do. And I kind of knew I wanted to do a modern apprenticeship kind of thing rather than a university. I would rather have worked and done exams as I did that. And my favourite subject in school was maths. I didn't have accountancy as an option in school, so I knew I liked numbers, and I knew I wanted to do something like a modern apprenticeship type thing. So ICAS was the best option for me, and I've really enjoyed doing it.
That's great. And it's really interesting to say you had no accountancy experience before you applied for the role.
No, I had no idea what it was like.
And how did you find that? Were there moments when you first started that you thought, gosh, what have I let myself in for? Or
Yeah, I mean, when I first started, I really had no idea what to expect or what it would be like. There was a lot of other students in the office, so that was very helpful. There's a lot of people that also are in the same position, and I think I was more worried that I'd be out of depth since I had no experience in an office or anything like that. But I guess when you start from school, no one expects you to know anything, so everyone's just there to help. And yeah, no, I really enjoyed it.
that's great. Thank you. And then I think I'm going to ask Rory, because you studied accountancy at university, so you also made that decision maybe a little bit earlier than Sarah and Robert. So what was it that led you to accountancy?
I was quite lucky. I got a bit of a taste of accountancy at school. I did higher accountancy, and it was obviously a bit more of a basic level than what we were doing at uni. But yeah, I just got a taste of it, and I quite liked just the. I think it was the sort of ability to be able to see and read what's going on in a business just by looking at the sort of skeleton, like the numbers of it. I quite enjoyed that, and yeah, I then sort of decided to do that at uni, and then it was during my internship as well that I got sort of, it's all quite theoretical at uni, and I got a bit more of a taste working in the workplace and sort of seeing how it's applied a bit more, and getting a bit more of a sort of real world sense of how it all, lining this theoretical stuff up with how it actually sort of turns into practice, and then discussing with other folk and who were at the firm while I was doing the internship as well, speaking with them about their experience with ADCAS and what you can go on to do. Yeah, I thought it was the right move for myself. So that was sort of what led me to where I am today.
Great. And I guess it's really interesting to hear you say the difference between, because Rachel didn't have the opportunity to study accountancy at all before she jumped into the training. you'd studied kind of quite theoretically at school and at uni. What was the biggest difference you found between that and then working and studying?
I think what particularly at university was having to, there was a large part of it which was of memorizing academic papers and looking at accounting sort of theory, and you don't get sort of I mean, the uni was quite good at sort of at integrating it a little bit, but I mean, seeing it in a real life scenario, you get a bit more of perspective of how it feeds into the business as a whole, I suppose. Whereas it's maybe a wee bit more focused at uni, at looking at the specific numbers and like theoretical papers. Whereas in practice, it's not much of that at all. It's a bit more how working in a team and how it all feeds into the business as a whole, I suppose.
Thank you. And I am assuming that your internship helped you with those kind of assumptions for when you did go in to the workplace.
Yeah, definitely. The firm was quite good at sort of having a reasonably sort of structured plan of clients that I would be working on from a sort of 6 weeks. So I was getting a pretty good wide variety of working on different types of clients and different audits. So I got sort of a pretty well-rounded taste of what it would be like in the workplace and working on different sizes of teams and different sizes of clients. So yeah, it definitely helped having that.
Thank you. And I think it's so interesting, just the very different paths you've all had into the same profession and the same qualification. So I'm going to come next to Sarah, who's one of the two who did economics with finance. And when you started that, did you know that you were thinking about maybe going into audit at the end point, or what was your decision-making process?
Yeah, no is the honest answer to that. So I really enjoyed economics and I really enjoyed finance as well. And I talked to a lot of people at careers fairs, etc., and to find out what kind of career I could go down. And accountancy kept popping up because it has flavours of economics and finance throughout it. And I started doing more research into ICAS and graduate opportunities, and I think I attended a few talks as well. And there was one quote, and it was, I can't remember the percentage, but X amount of CEOs are accountants or trained and had that background. And I thought, oh, okay. So I started to dig a wee bit deeper and thought, okay, this sounds good to me. I really like numbers, but I also like the people side as well. And I thought that would be a career that would combine both, the numbers as well as talking to lots of different people. And yeah, exactly what Rudy says, understanding the skeleton of businesses and the numbers, it tells such a big story. So yes, that's how I kind of fell into accountancy.
I think it's really interesting because we say this a lot, but I think if you're not in the profession, you might think it's all about numbers, all about balance sheets, but it is about people, and it's as much having those people skills as those numerical skills, if not more so these days, I think. Has that been your experience?
Yeah, absolutely. And I do feel when I was studying with ICAS, when you go into classes and stuff, um that comes through. You're talking to different people from different firms, you're doing presentations in class, etc. You're meeting lots of different people. So yeah, like you said, Poppy, it's not just numbers intense all the time. You are learning about all these other essential skills as well during your training. So that's why I thought it would be a good route for me, because every day is different. There's lots of numbers, but there's a lot of the people side which I enjoy as well.
And I think you and Rory have touched on that piece of knowing what's really going on in a business. So that curiosity and that professional curiosity, but being able to know the details must be quite intriguing as you go out and meet different companies as well.
Yep, absolutely. In my job, because I work in audit, you have to dig deeper into the surface of the numbers. So you have to, a number might say one thing, but the more you dig in deeper, it says another. And I feel that the ICAS journeys really helped with that in the training. And yeah, that's what I think.
Thank you. And then Robert, I'm coming to you last because in your introduction, you said you kind of fell into the qualification side. So you did economics and finance at uni without thinking that you were going to become a CA. So could you tell us when it became apparent to you that that was the career journey you were starting on?
Probably my first day of work when I joined the grad scheme, and we had an introduction on professional qualifications. I would say at that point I sort of realised that there was going to be some studying involved that I hadn't quite planned for. But if I'm honest, I probably chose my employer rather than the profession. You know, I looked across a lot of employers, and NatWest Group was one where I had lots of opportunities to go and do very varied things, and that's probably what interested me. I would say, it's interesting. I think Rachel mentioned at the beginning, turning up on that first day, and certainly I turned up on that first day bookkeeping class and thought, what on earth have I got myself in for? Just this morning, it's like you're going, debits and credits. That's child's play now. So ICAS preps you for the technical knowledge. But yeah, I probably fell into it, but it has given me a great understanding, I think, as everybody said, a really great understanding of how the financials of businesses work, and then being able to translate that into, quite simple terms for non-financial SMEs, who probably need to be helped through the numbers a wee bit more just to understand what it means. And that ends up feeding into my day job now quite a lot.
Right, and that goes back to, I guess, those people and communication skills. I think what all of you have spoken about is very different routes to the profession, very different decisions that led you there. But it shows what a varied profession it is, and what doors are open to you by getting that qualification. That you can work for a bank, you can work for an audit company, you can work for the public sector, and it's all around that one qualification at the centre of it. So thank you so much for sharing that. I think one of the things that always interests me is that two of you have spoken about how you didn't really have many early assumptions, but you turned up on the day and you realised what it was. But were there things you were expecting, and this is to everyone, were there things you were expecting your training to be that it wasn't, or it was better than, or things you were expecting it to be and actually it wasn't that at all? Are there any kind of assumptions or myths you went in with that you'd like to help bust for other students thinking to come into it?
I heard sort of going into it just through the internship, I suppose, and chatting to people who were sort of towards the end of their journey. I heard it was pretty challenging, and I heard it was quite tough, and that you would have no spare time or anything like that. And I'd sort of fully prepared myself going into it for the worst case scenario, where I just wasn't going to give myself any sort of like spare time or free time. I was just going to be studying the whole time. But I think, and I guess did a pretty good job of helping manage this and structure the course quite well, so that, oh, sorry, my lights have just gone off in my meeting room. But I think ICAS sort of did quite well, where the course is structured so that you can plan ahead, and it doesn't have to be all revising the whole time, and you have time for other things as well, and it is manageable. Like that was what I thought anyway. When you sort of get into it and learning the content, it's very doable.
That's great, and thank you for sharing that, because I do think that's something people worry about, that you're going to be working full time, you're going to be studying full time, and what a jump that is from either school or university. And Rachel, I wonder if you'd like to just talk a bit about how you found that, because obviously you came straight from school, so I imagine you probably hadn't had much even weekend work experience before you started, or had
Yeah.
you?
So I worked in Frankie and Benny's in my 6th year of high school on the weekends.
Excellent.
That's all the work experience I'd ever had. So it was definitely different. I think I honestly didn't have much expectations when I started, because I didn't know anyone who'd done ICAS before. I hadn't had any friends or people from uni that had told me any and what it would be like or anything. I did expect it to be difficult, which at times it was difficult. Like the exams aren't easy, but it's definitely, like what Rory said, it is manageable. And I mean, I got through it in the 5 years, and I definitely thought when I first started that I was going to struggle a lot more than I did, but you do get through it fine.
It's really good to hear. Thank you. And it's interesting the difference between maybe hearing a little bit of rumour and kind of perception in the market, which Rory did, and you going with no baseline knowledge and just giving yourself to it and giving it a go, and doing really well. One thing I'd just like to say for anyone listening is the reason Rachel had 5 years to complete the qualification is because she came directly from school, and a lot of employers choose to structure the training contract over 5 years for people who are maybe 17 or 18 when they start. The standard length of a training contract for a graduate would be 3 years though. So depending on where you join the profession, it maybe takes you a little bit longer or a little bit less. But Rachel, I think you still would have become a CA before a number of your friends had graduated and started their next career. So that's quite exciting.
Yeah. I remember when I first started and I'd met some of the students that were maybe in their second year of ICAS that have gone to university, and they were and I remember a couple of them said to me, I wish I knew there was a school leaver route when I was in school because of the age difference and everything. And it is, although it's a longer ICAS route, it is a quicker route overall with university than ICAS.
And I guess to go to Rory's point about how there's that academic learning and then there's the professional learning, you didn't have to move your mentality from one to the other. You just went straight into the professional learning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which makes a little bit of a difference as well. Sarah, Robert, any assumptions you had when you started that turned out to be completely not the case or were the case?
I think my experience mirrors Rudy's quite a lot in the sense of I did know how people told me how challenging and difficult it would be, and I went into thinking I'm not going to have a life, my weekends are going to be written off, and I found out that not to be the case. I feel if you're organised and on the ball, and like Rudy said, ICAS give you a plan. If you're organised, you can keep to that plan and you're able to go to concerts and birthdays and stuff and still have a bit of respite outside studying, which is so important. And I kind of didn't recognise that until later on in my ICAS career, like ICAS journey. So I feel that I went in thinking it was going to be my whole life. And don't get me wrong, you do have to commit a lot of your time to studying and making sure that you're prepared for your exams and things. But I still went on holiday. I still had, annual leave where I could, celebrate birthdays, etc. And I'm a swimmer, so I was able to swim. So yeah, I think that's really important to get across. But I must emphasize the undertone of that is as long as you're organized and keep on top of things, that's when you can do all those things. So yeah.
Thank you. And I think one of the really interesting things is it's other soon to finish CA students who are the ones spreading that narrative that it's really hard, it's really whatever, to the people coming through. So it's great to hear people who've come through the qualification really recently say, if you're on top of things and if you're organised and you approach it in the right way, you can have a life outside of work plus study. So I think that's a really positive message to get across. And I'm sure you'd agree there were times when particular subjects maybe took more from you than others and work was busier, and all of that has a bit of a cadence, but very glad that you're able to keep up swimming and birthdays, which you mentioned twice, so I think are important to you. Robert, anything you wanted to add in that space?
I mean, I would probably echo what Sarah and Rudy have said already, in that you come in and certainly there's a mantra of, oh, this is going to be the worst 3 years of your life. And to be honest, I had quite a great time. So I don't know what they were doing with all their time before. They must have been doing something else. But I think the other main one I hear quite a lot is that it's really hard to do if you've not done accountancy before. And if I'm honest, I just didn't find that at all. I think from the very first level that you do, it takes you through the introductory steps of everything. So I work with people who did degrees in engineering or in politics, and actually they're not numbers peoples at the end of the day, and they still found it quite easy to follow through once you've got the basics right. And it's hard. It's anything that's worth having is going to be hard. But the way that the course is set out is it structures you to allow you to learn from the ground up the very fundamentals, and then build on that throughout the 3 years or the 5 years in Rachel's case to make sure that you come out as a fully rounded accountant. But I think over the 3 years, you come to your final level integration, and you do a sort of a business case. And this probably comes back to Rudy's point from earlier when he was talking about being, it's interesting to understand what's going on from a business just from seeing the financials on the page, and that probably brings that to life. And no prior experience, and suddenly you look at those numbers and it tells a story.
Fantastic, thank you. And I think that's a really interesting point just to expand on, that more than 50% of our trainees don't have an accountancy background. So, and you'll see on the call, it's 75% of the people on the call didn't necessarily have a pure accountancy background. So the ICAS CA is structured that the first level is from the start. So if you've done an accountancy degree, you might have exemptions, and Rory, I'm sure you had some exemptions at the knowledge level. But if you haven't, they're designed to set you up so that you've got the basic understanding to then go on to the next 2 levels. And there's debate about whether actually starting from the start is the best thing that could happen, or whether having a background in accountancy is better. I think it depends very much on the individual and how you find it when you get going. And that seems to be the narrative that's coming out today, which is brilliant. Beyond those technical skills, and I guess building on the fact that so many people who are on the CA programme now don't have a background in accountancy, what are those non-technical areas that you think it's really useful to have when you start training? Was there anything that you think set you apart from your peers, and that's why you got the position that you got? Or anything that you think, oh, I wish I knew more about problem solving or time management before starting, for example?
I'd
Sarah?
say,
Oh, sorry, Rachel. No, Rachel, please.
I'd say time management is really one of the biggest ones. I think coming from school and then going on to ICAS exams, it is quite a big jump in how much information you learn for the exams. And I think, yeah, time management, make sure you give yourself all the time that you need before the exam to get it all into your head and everything. And that also applies into work as well. When busy periods, I think time management is a really important one.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would probably. Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, I was probably just going to echo that and say that the time management I found was hugely important. I mean, I thought coming from uni as well, I sort of felt that, I mean, during uni, you could sort of maybe get away with leaving the content to a little bit towards the sort of second half of a semester. So first 5 weeks of a semester or so, you could sort of like ease off on the work a little bit and then just really revise very, very hard at the end. But I think from the start, it helps hugely where if you've got, if you're doing an ICAS block and it's 10 weeks long, you're just on top of it basically from week 1. And it does help when it's sort of structured where you have workshops where you'll go in, it will be, it'll say that you'll have to cover, modules 1 to 4 for this workshop. Covering those, making sure that you have them sort of looked through and learned before you go in means that you just structure that sort of semester, I suppose, like a little bit better, and it helps hugely. Just by the time that you get to the exam, you're not cramming loads in. You're going, okay, I've done this before. I'm just sort of refreshing my memory basically. So it helped hugely with time management and planning and structuring. I think definitely.
Thank you. Any other thoughts? Sarah, I think you were going to come in earlier.
Yeah, I think to re-emphasise time management and organisation's key, they're like pretty fundamental, I would say, in the ICAS journey, and I feel you get better at it as time goes on. I would say for me as well, one of the most important non-technical skills is knowing how you work. And I know that sounds like quite a funny thing to say, but I had friends who studied at very early in the morning, and I was one of these people that turned up to class and didn't do anything beforehand in the morning. I'm not a morning person at all. I'm a night owl, so I'll study till like 11:30 at night, but my friends were already in bed, or we were texting about things and they wouldn't reply to me. So I think I at first was like, oh, I'm not studying in the morning. Does that mean I'm going to fail my exams? No, like I just learned what works for me, and most of the time that does help, and you have to work to your strengths as well. It's the same as the weekend. I always took Saturday mornings off. I went to the gym, I went swimming. I kind of did that as like a reset from work and studying from earlier on in the week. So I would definitely say that's a key skill that you need to know quite early on to make sure you succeed in your exams and successful in ICAS.
And I think that's a really good tip, because for most people starting with ICAS, they're either coming straight from school or from uni, and it's knowing who you are and what you need, rather than comparing yourself to everyone else, or listening to people when they say it's brutal, you can't celebrate birthdays or go swimming or whatever. But actually, you might know that you work in a totally different way, and it's finding what works for you. It's going to be so significant. Thank you.
Yeah,
That's a really
absolutely.
good point to have raised. Because I'm a 5:30 in the morning person, I can't study in the evenings, but I get that that's not for everyone at all. Robert, anything you wanted to add in that space?
I think for me, time management definitely important, but also sort of problem solving and a bit of curiosity. I think will take you a long way, both in work and in ICAS. Certainly, when you start a new job, you've got no idea what's coming and what you're doing. So, the 100% of things that come at you, you have no idea what the answer is and no idea how to do it. And that problem solving is going to take you, 90% of the way there, and then you're going to need a hand in the last 10%. And that applies to ICAS as well. I think you have fellow graduates or fellow colleagues that are going through exactly the same path. I think we had a group chat where we would have questions at all hours of the day, and early to late evening sometimes, going, why does this work? Why does that make sense? And it's a lot easier when you've got three of you trying to find the answer to it. I must admit, it does sometimes mean that you come up with three entirely different answers, and you have a healthy debate about it while you're sitting eating your dinner. But certainly the curiosity to go a wee bit further. The courses, the materials will give you the technical understanding and some commercial insight, but to really get a deep understanding, actually seeing how you apply that in your job, how you apply that in day to day, and what else there is interesting in that space helps quite a lot.
Thank you. And that's a really great one to pull out, that professional curiosity, but also personal curiosity. When you approach any career, being curious as to the why something works, not just that's the answer, but why is it the answer? Why is that answer better than that answer? Because as you study for your CA, you'll know sometimes there are two right answers, and actually you need to get to the rightest answer, if that's the right wording. So having that curiosity, which has been referenced when you're talking about understanding how businesses work through the numbers, is only going to set you up for success, which is great. I think we've talked a lot very positively about how you approached your studies. I think, not to be negative, but it'd be interesting to know, did you ever, and I think you're going to say yes as the answer, so I'm going to rephrase it, were there things you found more challenging than others? Were there setbacks you had? I'm not going to ask if anyone failed an assessment, but what did you do when you found, I'm looking at this, I'm reading this, I just don't get it? How did you approach that? Anyone feeling brave?
Yeah, so I think a lot of it was probably mindset with certain of the courses. So some of the courses, like commercial finance, right, really relevant to the work I do. Assurance, potentially not quite so relevant, and certainly felt a wee bit of a drain at times. It's like the internal audit will come and find me when I need to discuss this, not me looking forward to it. But it's a bit of a mindset shift, if I'm honest. Once I understood what was going on in the courses, what the skills were that they were actually trying to teach you, I realised it was actually relevant to my job, and actually very relevant to my job, and I could use it day to day. I think it's quite often bringing that balance of, okay, I might not use this as the course uses it, but how does it actually translate into my day job, and what are the skills that I'm going to take for that? There's plenty of challenges. I think when we first started, it was very much everybody sits in a line and faces the front of the classroom, and we all got our pens out and took notes and debits and credits, and we got to the end, and then the answer was either right or wrong. I think by the time we came to integration, I'm sure other people would echo this. It was much more interactive and much more about problem solving as a group and presenting back. And I was a wee bit skeptical of that approach at first, but definitely found it to be a much better way to learning. And I think, Poppy, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's through all the levels now. So quite a change in the syllabus, which has really helped to make it actually much more interactive and a much better experiences in my experience.
I'm not going to correct you because you're absolutely right. We have that kind of problem solving and workshopping throughout the syllabus. And I think it's always a good tactic to think, I understand this enough that I've got it right, but could I explain it to someone else? And if you can explain a concept to someone else, you've really got it. So no, I think it's really good to hear how that evolved for you. Sarah, I think you've just...
Yeah, so for me, my study approach was question practice after question practice. That's most of my studying time consisted of. And sometimes it was quite disheartening doing a question and being like, oh, I don't know where to start. So what I started to do was setting a timer on my phone and kind of doing, like, if I can't, I'll answer as much as I can within how many marks or roughly the question is, and then I'll stop there and then kind of draw a line under it, like not sit, because I remember some nights I'd sit and I'd be like, oh, 2 hours on one question, that's not productive. So I started implementing this kind of timer thing to make sure I was going through stuff and not feeling that after the end of the night being like, oh, I've done one question and I didn't know how to do it type thing. So that would be one of the things that I did to help approach when I struggled with something or it was a difficult topic, just saying, okay, there's an end in sight, 19 minutes to go. I'm sure I did do that in some questions and I gave myself 20 minutes.
Excellent. And that's a good way of knowing the way you study best. And I think quite a lot of your approach seems to draw on knowing what works for you and applying that, which is really sensible. Did anyone find they needed to reach out for support, either from colleagues or from other students or from the ICAS tutors? And how did you approach that?
Yeah, I mean, I was sort of in the same boat with Sarah, where practice questions helped me hugely. And I remember it was my first block of ICAS, and it was my first sort of assessed question, and they sort of recommended it to do it under time restraints, and I'd sort of given it a bash, and I thought, oh, that went pretty well. And then I got the feedback, and I was like, that's not gone as well as I thought it's gone. And it's sort of going and actively seeking the feedback. The lecturer is always there. So going in and speaking to the lecturers are really helpful, and explaining just, if you're in a lecture just at the end or at lunch or something, just going and asking, am I right about this, or I was working on this earlier, and they'll give great feedback. And again, sort of fortunate enough as well in my firm as well, we've got people who are more senior who have sat exams fairly recently as well, who will always be sort of more than happy to have a look at a question or a paper that you've done. But yeah, just being active in taking on feedback is definitely key.
Thank you. And it was a real smile of recognition from me there, because I think we've all had that experience where you do something, you're like, I've aced it, they're going to name this exam after me, and then you get it back and you're like, oh, I didn't quite get that. So it's really good to know that you took that and you built on it, you got the feedback, you got the support to then turn it around for the next time. So brilliant. How about you, Rachel? How did you find when things weren't going quite how you wanted them to?
Yeah, I think definitely there were certain exams that I preferred learning more. I know I work in the accounts side of things, so financial reporting was like one of my favorite ones, and tax I enjoyed, but audit I really didn't enjoy learning about audit at the time. It's just one of those, hadn't ever done it in practice. I think it does help doing it in practice to get your head around things. So I know I did struggle to get into the mindset of studying for the audit exam, but I have one of my friends in the office who works in the audit department. He was doing ICAS with me at the same time. So we both had different strengths. So it was really helpful to meet with him, and he'd help me in the audit side of things and I'd help him in any other questions he had. So definitely using like your peers that maybe have more of a specialize in certain things. I think that helped me a lot.
Great, thank you. And it sounds like you all kind of approached it in fairly similar ways, but bring it back to what works better for you and what was right for you at the time. So it's really helpful to know that. I think the key takeaway is that kind of resilience, that if something's not quite working one way, look at another way to do it and maybe reach out for support in doing it a different way. Thank you. I'm gonna we'll move on to questions shortly, but one thing I'd just like to ask you is, what's the best piece of career advice you've received, or what's the advice you'd give to your younger self or to anyone thinking about following the kind of career path you have? And I'm going to wait until someone looks like they're ready to answer that. Rory's lights just went off, so we won't
Gone
get
off
to
again.
him first. Anyone want to jump in on that one? Sarah, you look like you're about to talk.
Yeah, it's such a good question, and I do think it takes a bit of thought because I've been given great advice. I would say to my younger self, take every opportunity. You know, if a door opens, go through it. And exactly what Robert was alluding to earlier on, like you just don't know where your career is going to go. And yeah, if a door opens, definitely take it.
Brilliant. Anyone else?
I would probably say just don't be afraid of making mistakes and just go for it. Everyone is in the same boat when you're doing ICAS, so everyone's feeling the same sort of way. So if you're nervous about asking something or doing an exam or a mock or a test or anything, just give it your best shot and don't worry about making mistakes, but just try and do your best to learn from them. And yeah, that's what I'd say.
I think that's brilliant advice. And if I can, I was training for a marathon a couple of years ago, and it really frustrated me that on day one, I didn't know how to run a marathon. And I think sometimes we see students coming in expecting to already be qualified. You're learning and you're expected to learn through that 3 or 5 year process. So absolutely don't get disheartened, just keep going and take the opportunity to learn from any setback you have, while taking every opportunity, as Sarah says, because it's interesting the opportunities you see even as you're still training that just come through. Rachel, any advice you'd give to other people who may be thinking of coming directly from school?
Yeah, I mean, very similar things, I'd say. I think don't be afraid to ask questions is a really big one. I had to ask for questions all the time. I still do ask questions all the time in work when I need help. I think that's really important. Again, I know we've said it a few times, but managing time. I think when I first started 5 years ago now, I think that was my biggest struggle. I think I struggled to figure out my own study routine and making sure everything is getting done on time. And I think once you get that down, you'll be fine. I think that is a really important thing going forward.
Thank you. And then Robert, we came to you first, so I'm going to give you the last word, if I may. What's the best advice you've either received or you'd like to give?
It sticks in my head. I think the best advice I received is make decisions based on what you think you're going to enjoy. So irrespective of whether it's easy, hard, what you think is going to help your career. The question I always come back to when I'm making a big decision on where I'm going or what I'm doing is, do I think I'm going to enjoy it? And then, if it turns out that I don't enjoy it, no regrets, absolutely none. But certainly if that's straight from school or going to uni first, if that's Big Four or industry, however it is, if you're making the decision based on what you think you're going to enjoy and find interesting, I think that helps a lot.
I think that's a fantastic final piece of advice. Thank you. And also, I like your no regrets. You learn as much from the things you do that don't turn out quite as how you wanted them as from everything going well. So thank you. I'm just going to say thank you to the speakers. Really enjoyed hearing that. I'm going to give you a couple of questions from the audience now. So let me just look through. There's been a couple of mentions of being part of a cohort, and some of you have trained with smaller firms than others. How do you find a cohort? Is that within your firm? Is that across the classes that are studying ICAS? How did that work for each of you? Anyone?
Well, I had sort of started with a couple folk, and we sort of did lectures together to progress through the ICAS sort of journey together. But and after a short amount of time, just realised that it wasn't for them. So I ended up sort of actually just finished by myself. But when folk start together and they sort of do it in a group, it's definitely good, and it's really helpful to have people that you're doing it with. Because obviously, if you're studying or you're going through the same thing, if you're working in the same sort of department, you can ask each other questions and share sort of advice on revising and stuff like that. So it's my sort of experience with it anyway.
Thank you. And I think one of the things, we're talking about cohorts for studying, but one of the things we haven't really touched on is that as well as the qualification, ICAS is a membership organisation. So the people you meet while you're studying will be your peers, will be your professional network for the rest of your career, whether you stay in practice, whether you even stay working as a CA or you go to become a CEO, as Sarah touched on earlier, you know, that network remains with you. So building those networks from the start is really useful. We've got a few questions on the same topic, so I'm going to just kind of combine them a little bit. Been questions coming through about the kind of support you get from your company, your employers. So whether it's around study leave or helping you or giving you extra time for assessments, do you get resit opportunities? All of that. I think it would be really interesting to talk about what your experience has been with your organisation. Sarah, would you like to kick off on that?
Yeah, well, I finished my training contract with Audit Scotland, and I think they're a fantastic employer. And I'm not just saying that because I'm on this call. They're fantastic. So anyone listening that is interested in the graduate or school leaver opportunity should definitely look at Audit Scotland, because they're great for support and helping you through, and kind of on the job training as well. I would definitely say, if you're interested in doing ICAS, have a look at employers. So we've all gone different routes, but for NatWest, it sounds like is it like a rotation, Robert, or you can kind of pick what you want, and then maybe others are a bit like you have to apply for an audit position. So once you get there, you're in audit or tax, etc. So I would definitely say do your research. Every company is different, especially for like resets and things like that. But these are the type of questions as well you can ask at careers fair. And because I feel like every company is different with that.
Thank you. I think that's really good advice, to do a bit of research before you jump in. And it's also what will set your applications apart from everyone else's if you're applying specifically to an organisation because you know about them and you know what they do. I'm going to ask you, Rachel, because you obviously went directly from school, and one of the questions we've had is directly from school, and you've said you didn't know anyone else in the industry. How did you choose the employer you chose? Because you seem very happy there.
Yeah, so my dad's accountant used to work in the firm that I applied for, and he only had good things to say about them. So that's the reason I chose, which it was originally Geoghegan's at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And then we merged with MHA about 2 years ago. And even though it's a much bigger firm, it's still got the same atmosphere, and like it's a really good place to work at. But the benefits from being a slightly bigger office, a bigger firm, is I've had the opportunities to do a secondment. So I did a secondment for a London audit team, and I actually hadn't even done audit before. So I was going back to my ICAS notes and being like, what is this again? But it was really good, lots of good opportunities. And in regards to exams, they're very good with the resets and the time they give you. It's a very supportive place.
Thank you. Anything you'd like to add, Robert or Rory?
Yeah, I think it's just, it can vary from firm to firm, but yeah, Henderson Logie have always been very supportive in terms of just providing that additional bit of time around exams. I think there's a bit of liaising with ICAS of recommended days, so there'll be sort of for this module, we'd recommend you get this amount of time off, and you know, the firm will make sure that your day-to-day sort of work is planned around that, and your studies will sort of take priority in those scenarios. Yeah.
Fantastic. And I think it's worth me just saying for anyone listening that I know the person responsible for trainees at each of these companies, and actually each of the companies we work with. And they are all really dedicated to their students' well-being, and helping students do well in the workplace, but also on their qualifications. So if anyone is interested in getting a training vacancy for the ICAS particularly, we have a website, becomeaca.org.uk, which is where our vacancies are posted. And you can have a look at the employers there, and they would all have, as Sarah said, very different approaches, but fundamentally at the heart of it, they're all incredibly student-centred and really protective of their students, which is lovely to see. I'm going to say thank you very much to all of our panellists. It's been absolutely fantastic to have you here and to chat to you. In the preamble, I did say that I would keep an eye on the clock, and I've let the clock go a little bit further because I was enjoying your conversation so much. But to everyone listening, it would be really great if you could leave us a rating for today's webinar, and there'll be a short question poll appearing on your screens shortly. I'd like to thank all of our panellists for joining us, and the audience for joining the webinar today. Our next event is going to be Bright Networks internship experience, which will be from the 15th to the 18th of June. We think it's a brilliant option for anyone wanting to explore careers and build skills without committing to a full summer internship. And my colleague Jamie's just dropped the sign up link into the chat. So feel free to sign up now, don't miss out. But again, thanks to everyone who joined us today. It's been a really great conversation. Thank you.